Emily sat in the corner of her favorite cafe in downtown Seattle, the soft hum of conversation around her blending with the steady patter of rain against the windows. She stared absent-mindedly at her latte, feeling a quiet emptiness she couldn't quite name. Life with Mark had been comfortable, predictable, and safe for the past 3 years, but lately, she felt a restless pull, a whisper of something missing, a part of herself she had ignored. She scrolled through her phone, trying to distract herself from the nagging thought that her days had become a loop of routine and polite smiles. That's when she saw him, a familiar figure walking through the cafe door, rain dripping from his hair and coat, shaking off the storm outside with a grin that sent a strange warmth through her chest. Liam. Her old college friend, someone she hadn't seen in nearly 5 years, and yet the sight of him brought back a flood of memories she had almost forgotten: late-night study sessions, laughter echoing in dorm halls, secret conversations under the stars, and a comfort that had always felt effortless. Their eyes met, and Emily felt a shiver of recognition, a mixture of surprise and excitement, like meeting an old piece of herself she hadn't realized was missing. Liam's smile widened as he approached, a genuine, easy smile that made her heart skip. "Emily? Is that really you?" he asked, his voice warm and familiar. She stood up, her own smile a little shaky, her stomach fluttering. "Liam, wow, it's been forever," she replied, words failing to capture the unexpected joy she felt at seeing him again. They talked for a few awkward moments at first, catching up on years apart, but soon, the conversation flowed naturally, slipping into the comfortable rhythm they had once shared. Hours passed unnoticed as they shared stories about work, life changes, and little personal victories, each laugh and shared memory stirring a sense of connection Emily hadn't felt in a long time. She noticed how Liam listened intently, how his eyes softened when she spoke, and how the warmth in his gestures made her feel both seen and understood. Even the small things, the way he leaned forward when she laughed, the way he absent-mindedly brushed the damp hair from his forehead, made her heart race in ways she hadn't expected. As the cafe slowly emptied and the night outside grew darker, Emily realized she had laughed more today than she had in months with Mark. There was an energy between them, a quiet electricity that made her acutely aware of every movement, every glance, every subtle gesture. When Liam finally stood, checking his watch, there was a pause, a moment where the world outside the cafe seemed to disappear, leaving only the two of them suspended in that small, intimate space. "I'm glad we ran into each other tonight," he said softly, a hint of something unspoken lingering in his words. Emily felt her pulse quicken, unsure of what to say, unsure of how to respond to a feeling that was both thrilling and terrifying. She nodded, managing a quiet, "Me too," though inside, her heart was a whirlwind of excitement and unease. Leaving the cafe, the rain had softened to a gentle drizzle, and Emily walked through the misty streets with a strange mix of emotions swirling inside her. Thoughts of Mark, of their shared life, tugged at her heart, but the memory of Liam's smile, his presence, the way he made her feel alive in just a few hours, was undeniable. She couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in her, a small but powerful change that made her question the life she had been living, the routines she had accepted, and the feelings she had ignored. That night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she replayed every word, every look, every small gesture, trying to understand why seeing Liam had stirred something so deep within her. Was it nostalgia? Was it longing? Or was it the realization that she had been craving more than the comfort of familiarity, that she had been waiting for a spark that would remind her she was alive? Emily didn't know the answers, but she knew one thing: her life had tilted in a direction she hadn't expected, and the quiet pull she felt toward Liam was impossible to ignore. She tossed and turned, imagining the next encounter, wondering how she would feel, and whether the tiny flame that had ignited tonight would grow or burn out. The city outside remained alive with lights reflecting on wet streets, and the soft rhythm of rain felt like a quiet promise of change, of something new on the horizon. Emily understood, even then, that meeting Liam again was more than coincidence. It was a reminder of who she was, what she desired, and the emotional depth she had neglected in her comfortable life. Sleep finally came, but with it came a mixture of hope, fear, and curiosity, a tangled knot of emotions that left her both anxious and excited for what was to come. Little did she know, This encounter would set in motion a series of events that would challenge everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and the heart's quiet, unspoken longings, and that the spark she felt tonight was only the beginning of a journey filled with emotional discovery, tender moments, and the gentle tension of hearts drawn together in unexpected ways. Over the next few weeks, Emily found herself thinking about Liam constantly, the memory of his smile and the warmth of his presence replaying in her mind at the most unexpected moments, and soon, the universe seemed to conspire in bringing them together again. It started with chance encounters. She would run into him at the local bookstore, share a table at a quiet coffee shop, or find him walking through a rain-slicked park, each meeting carrying a sense of fate that made her heart race. At first, she told herself it was just nostalgia, the comfort of an old friendship, but as the days went by, she couldn't ignore the pull between them, subtle yet undeniable, like a thread tugging her toward him with a force she couldn't resist. Their conversations deepened, moving beyond casual catch-ups into stories about dreams, regrets, and the parts of themselves they rarely showed to anyone else, and Emily discovered a side of Liam that was tender, thoughtful, and endlessly attentive, making her feel truly seen in ways she hadn't felt in years. She noticed how his gaze lingered slightly longer than necessary, how he would laugh at her jokes even when they were silly, how his hand would brush against hers during casual gestures, leaving a warmth that spread through her chest and made her pulse quicken. One rainy evening, the city lights reflecting on wet streets, Emily found herself walking beside Liam on the way to his apartment, a soft drizzle falling around them, and she felt an ache of anticipation mixed with a twinge of guilt, knowing that these moments were stirring feelings she hadn't planned to feel while still being in a committed relationship with Mark. Inside his apartment, the atmosphere was quiet, intimate, and charged with a gentle tension that made Emily aware of every heartbeat, every movement, every small sound, and she realized that even in a simple, platonic moment, her emotions were growing deeper than she had anticipated. As they settled on the couch to escape the rain, Liam's presence so close, the soft lighting casting shadows across his features, Emily felt a mix of comfort and longing that was almost overwhelming, and when he gently shifted her legs to make her more comfortable, it was a small, innocent gesture, yet it carried a weight of intimacy that made her cheeks flush and her heart flutter uncontrollably. They laughed awkwardly at the sudden closeness, both sensing the unspoken tension, but neither wanted to break the moment, and Emily found herself staring at Liam, noticing the curve of his smile, the warmth in his eyes, the way he seemed to care about her in a way no one else had recently, and it stirred a longing she couldn't ignore. They talked late into the night, voices soft, words filled with honesty and vulnerability, sharing fears, hopes, and memories, and Emily felt a connection that was both exhilarating and frightening because it made her question everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and desire. She kept thinking about Mark, her steady, reliable partner, and the life they had built together, and yet the feelings that Liam awakened within her were impossible to ignore, and she felt a growing tension between what she had and what her heart seemed to crave. Each interaction with Liam left her simultaneously exhilarated and guilty, her emotions tangled between excitement and responsibility, and she began to see that her connection with him wasn't just about attraction, it was about rediscovering parts of herself she had long neglected, parts that longed for adventure, tenderness, and emotional intimacy. One night, as the rain fell harder and the streets shimmered with reflections of neon lights, Liam reached out, his hand brushing hers lightly, a spark of warmth passing between them, and he admitted softly that he hadn't stopped thinking about her since the first night they had reconnected, that he felt a closeness with her that was rare and precious. And Emily's chest tightened with the bittersweet mixture of joy and fear that came with knowing her heart was being pulled in two directions. She felt emotions she had suppressed for so long, desire, longing, affection, and the strange, dizzying sense of being alive in a way that was thrilling and dangerous all at once, and she knew that the bond between them was growing stronger with each shared moment, each tender word, and each lingering glance. Emily began to notice how naturally she could talk to Liam, how his presence calmed her anxieties while stirring new hopes, how simple acts, like him offering her a blanket when she shivered or sharing an old memory that made her laugh uncontrollably, made her feel deeply connected to him in ways she hadn't experienced in years. Their friendship had subtly shifted into something more profound, though neither of them had crossed into overt romance, and that subtle tension, that careful dance of closeness and restraint, made every encounter feel electric, charged with emotion, and emotionally intimate without being inappropriate, a delicate balance of affection and self-control that left Emily both exhilarated and conflicted. She found herself replaying moments over and over in her mind, the way Liam had looked at her when she laughed, the warmth of his hand near hers, the way he listened so attentively to everything she said, and she realized she was falling into a place of emotional vulnerability she had never allowed herself before. One evening, after a long walk through the rain-drenched city, Liam invited her to sit beside him on the couch, and as they shared a quiet silence, Emily felt the magnetic pull of his presence, the weight of unspoken words, and the gentle intimacy that existed between them, realizing that something inside her had shifted, that her heart was waking up to possibilities she had long denied herself. She remembered moments from their college days, moments of laughter and care, and saw them now through a lens colored with longing, tenderness, and a sense of deep emotional connection that neither time nor distance could erase. And as Liam shifted her legs gently to make her more comfortable, a small, innocent gesture that spoke volumes in its tenderness, Emily felt a rush of awareness, her heart, her emotions, her very being responding to someone in a way that was intoxicating, gentle, and overwhelmingly human. She sat there, looking at him, feeling both guilty and elated, knowing that the emotional intimacy they shared was real, meaningful, and impossible to ignore, yet also aware of the complexity it brought to her life and her relationship with Mark. Over the following days, Emily found herself balancing thoughts of Liam and Mark, walking a delicate line between excitement and caution, longing and loyalty, discovering that human emotions were far more complicated than she had allowed herself to believe, and that sometimes, feelings weren't simply right or wrong, they were honest, raw, and transformative. And so, the weeks unfolded with a mix of quiet encounters, heartfelt conversations, and moments of tender connection, each one deepening the emotional bond between Emily and Liam, leaving her both thrilled and uncertain, her heart alive with feelings she hadn't expected, and her mind struggling to reconcile desire, affection, and loyalty. By the time she realized it, Emily understood that her life was no longer just a straight path with predictable steps. It was a journey full of emotional twists, gentle tension, and moments that left her questioning everything she had once thought simple, knowing that the connection with Liam was real, meaningful, and capable of teaching her about love, longing, and the quiet, transformative power of human closeness. As the days turned into weeks, Emily felt herself pulled deeper into the emotional world she and Liam had created, each interaction leaving her heart racing and her mind swirling with thoughts she hadn't anticipated. And though she tried to maintain a sense of balance, the connection with him was impossible to ignore, weaving itself into the fabric of her daily life. Every morning, she found herself replaying their conversations, the way his laughter had a way of echoing in her memory, the warmth in his gaze that lingered long after they parted, and the small gestures, the way he would brush a damp strand of hair from his forehead, the gentle way he adjusted her coat when she shivered, that carried a tenderness that made her feel cherished and alive in a way she hadn't felt in years. Emily knew the feelings she was experiencing were complicated. She loved Mark, and he had been her partner, her support, her safe harbor for years, yet the spark with Liam awakened a part of her she had neglected, a longing for connection, intimacy, and understanding that went beyond familiarity. She began to notice the contrast between the steady comfort of her relationship with Mark and the electric, unpredictable intensity she felt with Liam, and while she cherished both, she realized she could no longer ignore the truth. The emotional bond with Liam was growing stronger, deeper, and more consuming with every shared word, glance, and laugh. One evening, as they walked through a quiet, rain-soaked street illuminated by the soft glow of streetlights, Emily felt the familiar flutter in her chest, a mixture of excitement and fear, as Liam slowed beside her, his voice low and gentle, expressing how much he valued their time together, how rare and special he found the connection they shared, and how he didn't want to lose the closeness that had developed between them. Her heart ached with both longing and guilt, a tug-of-war between desire and responsibility, yet when she looked at him, she saw honesty, care, and a softness that made every worry melt away for just a moment. That night, at Liam's apartment, the rain falling steadily outside, they sat together in quiet companionship, talking about dreams, fears, and the parts of themselves they had never shared with anyone else, and Emily felt an intensity of emotion she hadn't realized existed, a blend of comfort, longing, and the thrill of emotional closeness that made her pulse quicken and her thoughts race. Liam reached out to gently shift her legs to make her more comfortable on the couch, a small, tender gesture, innocent yet charged with emotional intimacy, and Emily felt herself melt into the warmth of his presence, realizing that connection could exist without overt romance, that closeness could be defined by trust, care, and shared vulnerability. She noticed how naturally she could confide in him, how his attention was unwavering, how every word he spoke seemed to matter, and she began to understand that what she felt was more than friendship, it was an awakening of emotional depth, a realization of what it meant to be truly seen, appreciated, and understood by another human being. Even as guilt whispered reminders of Mark and the life she had promised, Emily couldn't deny the exhilaration, the joy, and the quiet ache of longing that came from being near Liam, sharing moments that were tender, romantic in emotion if not in action, and deeply transformative in the way they touched her heart and mind. They began to explore their bond with careful attention, savoring conversations that stretched late into the night, walks that left them drenched in rain but laughing together, and moments of silence that spoke louder than words, each instance building a foundation of trust, tenderness, and unspoken affection that left Emily both terrified and exhilarated by the depth of feeling she was experiencing. Every time Liam laughed, looked at her with genuine care, or brushed her hand lightly, Emily felt a rush of emotion that reminded her she was alive, capable of feeling profoundly, and able to connect on a level she hadn't known existed, a realization that both thrilled and unsettled her because it forced her to confront desires and feelings she had long suppressed. She thought about Mark constantly, about the stability and love he offered, and while she appreciated him, she recognized that he hadn't ignited the same intensity of emotion, the same emotional awakening, that Liam had brought into her life, and this contrast both scared and fascinated her. One night, after sharing a long, heartfelt conversation about their pasts and fears, Emily found herself sitting close to Liam on the couch, the rain outside providing a quiet soundtrack, and she realized how much she cherished his presence, how much she had come to rely on the comfort and understanding he provided, and how deeply she wanted to preserve the bond they had created without losing herself in guilt or regret. Liam looked at her with a softness that made her heart ache, his voice calm yet charged with emotion as he admitted that he felt something rare and profound in their connection, that he hadn't anticipated how deeply they would grow close, and that he valued her presence in his life more than he could explain, leaving Emily speechless yet profoundly moved. The emotional tension between them was tangible, a delicate balance of longing and restraint, of attraction and respect, and Emily found herself walking a careful line, aware that each smile, each glance, each shared laugh brought her closer to a truth she wasn't sure she was ready to face, that her heart was shifting in ways that couldn't be ignored, that her feelings for Liam were real, and that they demanded acknowledgement even amidst the guilt and uncertainty. She spent sleepless nights thinking about him, about their talks, their laughter, their quiet moments of closeness, and the way he made her feel cherished, understood, and alive, and in the quiet hours, she realized that emotional intimacy could be as powerful, transformative, and consuming as any romantic gesture, leaving her both exhilarated and conflicted. Emily began to understand that her journey with Liam wasn't about crossing lines or making reckless choices, it was about discovering herself, exploring her capacity for deep connection, and embracing emotions that she had long denied or ignored, a lesson in vulnerability, self-awareness, and the complexity of the human heart. Each encounter with Liam carried a quiet intensity, a mixture of warmth, affection, and longing that left her breathless and thoughtful, forcing her to reflect on her life, her desires, and what it meant to love, be loved, and feel truly understood in a way that transcended routine or predictability. She became aware of how much she had changed in just a few weeks, the way she smiled more freely, the way she appreciated small gestures, the way her heart seemed to beat faster in moments of genuine connection, and the way her emotions felt alive and vibrant rather than subdued and controlled. And yet, alongside this awakening, there was the ever-present awareness of Mark, of loyalty, of the life she had built with someone she cared for deeply, and Emily struggled to reconcile the warmth, affection, and gentle romantic tension she felt with Liam with the responsibility and love she still held for Mark. It was a delicate, emotional dance, one of awareness, restraint, and self-discovery, where every glance, every conversation, every shared moment held the potential to teach her more about herself, her desires, and the nature of connection. By the time another rainy evening came, Emily knew she was no longer the same person she had been when she first ran into Liam in the cafe. The quiet longing in her heart had grown into a profound understanding of herself, her capacity to love, to connect, and to feel deeply, and she realized that while the path forward was uncertain, the journey itself was meaningful, filled with lessons about emotional intimacy, vulnerability, and the beauty of human connection. Sitting together, sharing a simple meal, watching the rain fall outside the window, Emily and Liam exchanged smiles that spoke volumes without words, each aware of the bond that had grown between them, of the feelings that were real, tender, and transformative, and of the careful path they would need to navigate as they balanced desire, loyalty, and self-discovery. The weeks had shown Emily that love, connection, and emotional intimacy could exist in many forms, sometimes quietly, sometimes thrillingly, but always with the power to awaken something deep inside, to challenge assumptions, and to bring clarity to the parts of herself she had long neglected. As she left Liam's apartment that night, the rain soft against her coat, Emily felt a mixture of exhilaration and apprehension, knowing that her heart was no longer simple, that her emotions were tangled, and that the journey ahead would require honesty, courage, and reflection, yet also certain that the experiences, conversations, and moments she had shared with Liam had opened a door to a richer, more vibrant understanding of herself and the way she connected with others. Each step she took home was filled with the quiet resonance of their bond, the emotional lessons she had learned, and the tender, unspoken romance that had unfolded in the spaces between gestures, glances, and conversations, leaving her both captivated and contemplative, aware that her heart had been touched in a way that would shape her choices, feelings, and understanding of love for months to come, and that the story she was living was far from over, poised on the edge of discovery, longing, and the gentle tension of hearts navigating the complexity of human emotion. After weeks of stolen moments, heartfelt conversations, and quiet emotional awakenings, Emily felt a profound shift within herself, a clarity that came not from choosing between Liam and Mark, but from understanding who she was and what she needed to feel alive, loved, and truly connected. She realized that her time with Liam had not been about betrayal or wrongdoing but about rediscovering the parts of herself that had been dormant, the parts that longed for emotional depth, tenderness, and a sense of being truly understood, and that realization gave her a kind of peace she hadn't known she was missing. Emily spent a few days alone, walking through the rain-slicked streets of Seattle, reflecting on every conversation, every glance, every subtle gesture that had made her heart race and her thoughts spin, and she understood that love was not a simple path, it was layered, complex, and sometimes required difficult choices and gentle reckonings. When she finally reached a decision, it was not hurried or forced, it was calm, deliberate, and rooted in honesty, to herself, to Mark, and to Liam. She knew she needed to return fully to her life with Mark, to invest in the relationship she had built, to communicate openly, and to rekindle the trust, intimacy, and excitement that had faded in the comfort of routine. But she also knew she would carry the emotional lessons from Liam forever, the warmth, the laughter, the tenderness, and the awareness that her heart was capable of feeling deeply and connecting in ways that were transformative and real. She arranged to meet Liam one last time at the cafe where they had first reconnected, the place that had sparked the chain of events that had shifted her perspective and awakened a dormant part of her soul, and when she saw him, there was no tension, no longing, no unsaid frustration, only mutual understanding and a quiet acknowledgement of the bond they had shared. "I'm grateful for this," she said, her voice calm, steady, and tinged with emotion, "for your friendship, your care, and the way you've reminded me of parts of myself I'd forgotten." Liam smiled gently, a mixture of warmth and wistfulness in his eyes, and replied, "You've reminded me too. Sometimes people come into our lives not to stay forever, but to help us remember who we are and what matters." They sat together, sipping coffee, sharing a few more light memories, and allowing the quiet intimacy of friendship to fill the spaces that had once been charged with longing, and in that moment, Emily felt a profound sense of closure, understanding, and peace. Leaving the cafe, she walked through the streets with a lightness she hadn't felt in months, a quiet joy that came from knowing she had made a choice rooted in integrity, self-awareness, and emotional maturity. Returning home to Mark, she approached him not with guilt or avoidance but with openness, honesty, and a readiness to engage in a deeper, more authentic connection than they had allowed in recent years, understanding that relationships required attention, effort, and the courage to nurture love even when it felt stagnant or routine. Over the next few weeks, Emily and Mark began to rediscover each other, having long conversations, sharing laughter, and exploring emotional depths that had previously been overshadowed by predictability, and she realized that love could be renewed, rekindled, and strengthened when approached with intention, honesty, and vulnerability. Yet even as her heart returned to Mark fully, she carried the memory of Liam, the warmth of his presence, the subtle gestures, the laughter, and the emotional closeness, as a gentle reminder that connection could be powerful, transformative, and unexpected, and that acknowledging these feelings did not diminish her love or loyalty but enriched her understanding of human emotion and capacity for empathy. Emily understood that life was not about denying emotions, suppressing longings, or avoiding uncomfortable truths. It was about facing them, learning from them, and allowing oneself to grow into a more aware, compassionate, and emotionally resilient person. She reflected on how the delicate balance between desire and responsibility, affection and loyalty, had taught her the importance of self-awareness, the value of genuine connection, and the ways in which emotional intimacy could shape and deepen relationships in ways she had never anticipated. In the quiet moments at home with Mark, holding hands, sharing smiles, and speaking with honesty and care, Emily felt a renewed sense of love, trust, and commitment, appreciating both the stability of their bond and the deeper emotional richness that she had discovered within herself. She realized that her journey with Liam had been a catalyst, a mirror reflecting her own needs, desires, and capacity for connection, and that embracing these realizations allowed her to engage with her life and relationships more fully, authentically, and thoughtfully. Over time, the ache of longing softened into gratitude, a warm remembrance of a chapter that had been meaningful but temporary, and Emily recognized that the story of her connection with Liam was not one of regret, but of growth, emotional awakening, and the quiet lessons of the heart. She learned that love could be both gentle and intense, fleeting and enduring, challenging and comforting, and that human connections often carried subtle lessons that stayed with us long after moments passed, shaping the way we loved, listened, and understood both ourselves and others. And so, as Emily walked through the city streets one sunny afternoon, watching the light dance on puddles left by a recent rain, she felt a deep sense of calm and fulfillment, knowing that she had embraced her emotions honestly, made choices with integrity, and honored the people and feelings in her life. The experiences, conversations, and gentle moments with Liam had changed her in ways she could carry into the future, enriching her love for Mark, deepening her emotional understanding, and teaching her that true connection is not always about possession or permanence, but about presence, understanding, and the willingness to grow alongside those who touch our hearts. Emily's story, once filled with uncertainty, longing, and quiet tension, now unfolded with clarity, emotional richness, and the gentle understanding that life, love, and human connection are rarely simple, always evolving, and filled with opportunities to discover, learn, and embrace the depth of feeling that makes us profoundly human. She smiled to herself, remembering the rain-soaked streets, the laughter, the late-night conversations, and the soft, tender gestures that had stirred her heart, and she felt grateful for the journey, knowing that every emotion, every choice, and every connection had guided her to a place of emotional maturity, inner strength, and a renewed appreciation for love in all its forms. Emily had learned that love is patient, understanding, and multifaceted, that longing can teach us about ourselves, that closeness can exist without crossing boundaries, and that the heart is capable of holding multiple layers of affection, insight, and gratitude without diminishing the value of any single connection. And in this realization, she found peace, fulfillment, and hope for the future, knowing that life's complexities, emotional awakenings, and tender moments were all part of the journey of being human, loving fully, and embracing every nuance of the heart's quiet, transformative power.